Council. Thanks for having me here tonight. And looks like you have a packed house here. I'll certainly speak to what was just brought up by Mr. Martin. I'd like to say, Mr. Martin, glad I got to meet you because I've heard much about you being the first juvenile officer in the state. But I do want to tell you that things have changed substantially. And I think we all recognize this, that the threat environment across the nation has elevated significantly in terms of school shootings. And the unfortunate reality of that is children are killed because of many schools being unprepared to deal with that threat. What we've also found is across the nation that so many of our school shooters don't come across the radar of juvenile detectives. They don't find themselves having a history of juvenile delinquency. So a decision was made just recently in the Hackensack Police Department, and I'll take ownership of that based on my own background. For those that know me, I spent a significant time in the state police, running the investigation branch of the state police, and part of that assignment was counterterrorism. Retiring from the state police, I went on and I did some consulting, particularly with the Department of Homeland Security. And one of those mission sets was actually to build out a national level education program on how to assess threats, particularly in schools like high schools. Very fortunate when the mayor and council had me come to Hackensack to engage in terms of policing, but at the same time, I recognized that there was an opportunity here to further protect our children in the schools. Many of you are not unfamiliar with a report that came out prior to my arrival by the R3 Strategies and Solutions. They gave an assessment, or they provided an assessment on the police department from soup to nuts. And one of the areas that they described was that someone needed to take a deeper review of the juvenile division. And that someone was me, taking over the helm. And the reason being was that in 2021, the juvenile division had documented a total caseload of about 596 cases. That's pretty significant. And I think Mr. Martin would appreciate those numbers. However, in that time period, there were only 18 juvenile complaints that were signed and only 11 station house adjustments that were conducted. So when I looked at those numbers, I questioned them. But at the same time, I recognized that the juvenile division, its mission set was pretty substantive because they found themselves not only managing SROs, school resource officers, class 3 officers, doing social media, being engaged in the community, and hosting a significant amount of events and engagements to engage with not only the community but the school, which I thought was phenomenal. But I realized, and I'll use this term mission creep, and I know the firefighters in the room understand this, is I started seeing that this mission creep that was taking place in what was the former Juvenile Bureau or Youth Bureau that Mr. Martin speaks to, clearly the mission creep was surpassing our own focused capabilities within the juvenile division to protect our schools. So what I did do was I restructured that capability because I wanted to increase the safety and security in schools and not decrease it. So, and I apologize, Mr. Martin, I'd love to have you in the PD to show you what's going on, but what we have done is we've increased the investigative capacity against juvenile delinquency, but at the same time, we've highlighted the ability to safely secure our schools with not only our uniformed SROs, but also our class 3s. I feel very comfortable with that, and I'm excited, Mayor and Council, on where this is going to go to be able to better protect our schools. And incidentally, as you're aware, in the last few weeks, we've had some incidents here. We've had an incident where there was a stabbing right outside the school. We had an SRO did a phenomenal job, identified the assailant, and part of that identification has led to a successful investigation. But the problem with that mission creep was that officer then became the primary detective on that, which in a sense removes them from that SRO position in the school. Secondly, we had an officer that was punched in the head in a football game. And to me, that's an affront on security, I should say on liberty, because if a cop can get punched in the head, then any of our residents could as well. So to me, I didn't feel that that was investigated in a timely manner that it should be. And then finally, just in the last couple of days, there was a lockdown at our school. So it shows that there's a lot going on in Hackensack with our schools, with juveniles. I can assure you, I am focused on that. I can assure you that we're going to give it the right capabilities because we care about our kids.
Okay, thank you. So it's fair to say, Mr. Guidetti, that we actually have more personnel involved in our juvenile now than we did before?
That's correct. Well, because we're able to leverage more on the investigative side. So, the Attorney General has directives about how to investigate juvenile delinquency. We're conforming to that. But at the same time, and I think I might have mentioned to many of you, is that in today's day and age, when a juvenile is involved in a crime, more than likely, there's an adult involved as well. And that, depending on the victim-assailant relationship, it can go either way, whether it's the juvenile being the victim or the juvenile being assailant. So often these investigations are run in concert with investigations again with adults as well. So we have talented folks in our investigative division, and I am quite certain that they're going to be able to not only handle crimes that involve juveniles, but do so in a manner that conforms to the Attorney General directive. And at the same time, be able to ensure that we have an unblinking eye on the safety and security of our schools. And that's important to everyone in this room.
Another thing real quick is, Mr. Morgan mentioned privacy for a juvenile going into the station. Is that station how will still apply where a juvenile is provided privacy for his protection?
Yes, it does, and that's why we conform to the Attorney General's directives. Those directives, we have to comply to them. We've heard before about infrastructure, and we work around the best we can with the infrastructure within the police department, but those mechanisms are in place to conform to the Attorney General's guidelines.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.